off to meet with Baye at the Free Wild Wildlife Center. We've known her for quite some time and we're going to interview her today.
One of our favorite people.
You bet.
So when are you going to release this troop?
Luckily these ones are a lot easier to release than the others because they've got mommies and daddies there.
What made it daunting?
31 kids running around.
Well, with the animals too, and
Yeah, it is hard. It's hard especially because when they're young, they get really excited. So to try and control them and explain to them your behavior around the animals. It's really, a lot of them come back from our Christmas camp, which was really easy because they knew the ropes and they were quite happy to teach the other kids, which was in our favor as well because they were always stepping in and guiding them and stuff. But it was daunting. But I think they learned a lot. So they
looked happy when they left, which is
they do. So like the Christmas camp, we did more of like an introduction, which was like getting to know the animals at the sanctuary, learning the rules and regulations, where you can and cannot go, what you can do, what we actually do. I mean, this was more of like an onset. Now we've got an actual 6-week program, which falls over the 6 months of each day. So today was Primate Day, so they learned all about bush babies, monkeys, baboons, all the primates in Zim, and how to, if you find an animal, what to do if you think it needs help, who to contact, what we do, what our aims are with all the animals here. And then we just did like a run through of all the animals that are at the sanctuary and what their plan is. And they learn really quickly. Like some of them, they said, oh no, we know we can't release these ones have to stay because of this and this and this.
Yeah.
So it's really good. And it's nice to know that they actually learn a lot and they've come back remembering what they had learned. So one of the things from December, from Christmas camp, was Clippy, marking his territory. So we had a little game that every time they saw Clippy marking his territory, they had to show us where he marked it, and then they would get a bracelet. So one little girl, the first thing she said this morning before she even came in, and she was just walking down the driveway, she said, oh, I found where Clippy's been marking today. So she remembered that from more than a month ago, which is amazing.
Really good. I mean, this is a good time to get these children, isn't it?
I think so, yeah.
You're raising your future wildlife guardians, aren't you?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So Baye, we know your story and we're friends for a while now, but most people don't know you very well. So tell them your story.
How it started.
Mm-hmm.
So 2013, I was filming a photographic safari in a private game reserve in Zimbabwe. The farm owner shot a couple of baboons, which is very common in Zim, to eradicate them and stop this problem of crop theft. And one of them had a baby baboon, and I was the only woman on the safari. And he phoned me and he said, look, I've shot a female baboon and it's got a baby. I don't know what to do with it. I don't have the heart to kill the baby. Could you look after her and make a plan and send her off somewhere? And that's how it basically started. So I had her with me I still had 9 days left of the safari. So by the end of the 9 days, I was really attached to her and couldn't really think of sending her anywhere. So I decided to raise her for as long as I could. And that's basically how the story started. As I raised Fuzzy, that was her name, or is her name, she's still with us. I raised her for about nearly a year, and then it came time where I decided that I couldn't just keep raising her the way I had been. She needed companions, she needed a plan for her future. So I traveled around Zim and looked at various options for her to go to, and then I just decided that not many of the places actually practice primate release and rehabilitation. So a lot of them, it's a really long process as I've learned, so a lot of them end up just keeping the primates for their full life in captivity. Majority of them also focus on other species, so primates go into their care as I don't know what you would call it, like just one species has come through their door and that's not their main focus, so they may focus on lions or something like that. So these animals end up having to live life in captivity, and I didn't want this for Fuzzy because up until then I had been looking after her in a free roaming environment. So Kumbu was actually helping me, and he would take her out. So in the mornings I would drop her off here at this property, and Kumbu would spend the day here with her in the trees, and I would come and sometimes both of them would be up in a tree in the rock. Sometimes I wouldn't find them, he would take her for a walk somewhere else. And she'd had that life of not being confined or in a cage, and I just decided that I didn't really want to take that away from her. I'd spent such a long time amount of effort giving her that opportunity of freedom that I didn't want to now take it away from her. So I got hold of some organizations in South Africa and Namibia, and Silka was actually one of them, and I went to go see her, and I asked her to teach me about rehabilitation, and she showed me her facilities. She explained it, and she just said to me, she was the one person that said to me, well, if Zimbabwe don't offer primate rehabilitation and release, why don't you just start? And I kind of laughed, and I was like a bit nervous because it was in the back of my mind, but it was a crazy thought at that time. I was 22, and you just think, you don't just start something like that. How do you even start something like that? And Silke just said to me, we've all started with one animal. She said, every single one of us rehabbers have got a story, and it all starts somewhere. So this is your starting point. And she said, you don't have to be anything huge or big. She said, just start somewhere and you'll grow. And that's basically what happened. So I came back to Zim after going to various other places and learning what I could. And I declared to my family that I was going to open up a wildlife sanctuary. And
How did they take that?
they kind of burst out laughing like this. I told them I was insane. I was 22. I had no money. I didn't have anything to start with. I just had the baboon. That was it.
We had the most important
Yeah,
part.
so I was like, well, we've got her. So I sold my car. I had a little car then, which my dad was horrified because he was like, well, you can sell your car, but he's like, how are you going to get to your primate sanctuary? So anyway, I sold the car and I built my first semi-wild enclosure, which has taken us about 4 years to master, because obviously then I didn't know much, so I was just kind of winging it. So I built that, and then it took me about another year before I got another primate, and that was Holly. She came from Wilders Life in Harare, who sent her to us to be a companion for Fuzzy.
That's the one you brought to breakfast, right?
No. That was the one she had gotten from.
That was Baloo, I think I bought to breakfast.
Yeah, that was, you had just gotten.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah, I think that was Baloo.
Was
I can't
that?
remember.
In
Yeah.
diapers and everything.
Yes. Yeah. So Wilders Life kindly sent us Holly because they had obviously her by herself, and then I had him Fuzzy. And when they saw our plans for release and rehabilitation, they sent us Holly so that she could be released, which was really amazing of them to do that and see the potential and give Holly that opportunity. So Holly was my second primate that I got, and then within the last 4 years we've just grown. I think we're on 24 primates now in 4 years. So that's how basically it started.
You talked about the other animals that you've already taken in and released. Make a quick list for me. What kind of animals have you done? I know the servals, the two
We've done
servals.
2 African servals. We've done about 9 pangolin in the last 2 years.
Wow.
Yeah, which has been amazing. That's been with obviously the help of Lisa from Tiki Highwood Trust. We've done zebra, 2 zebra. We've done some impala, a kudu.
Seems like there was a warthog here at one point.
We've done 2 warthogs actually, yeah. Bako and Bangwe. So,
And then you had the hedgehog.
yes, so this last year we did 39 hedgehog. The
39?
year before we did 54.
Oh,
Yeah, so some big hedgehogs, some owl releases, quite a few of those, commonly giant eagle owls.
Oh, we had those 2 beautiful owls. I think one of the first times we came to
yes.
visit you,
Yeah.
we had those 2 beautiful birds.
I'm trying to think what else. A lot of birds, small stuff like that as well.
And
So-
bullfrogs.
Bullfrogs, yes, remember the bullfrogs, yeah.
bullfrogs.
So one of my most favorite rescues of this season has been a little bat. Her name, a little fruit bat. Her name was Felicia. So she actually, this is quite a crazy story. A crow had obviously found her, plucked her up, and flew over a lion enclosure in Gweru. And some volunteers saw it and managed to get the crow to drop it, but it fell into a lion enclosure, and the lion tried to play with it. Anyway, they managed to get the lion out and save this tiny little bat. It was incredible. And she came to us, and her name was Felicia. She was amazing. So I was at that stage, I was away quite a bit, so Alec and Amy were helping me with her. So she was going to the release site with them. So she would hang in the car, on the back of the seat in the car, and drive all the way to Rwanda, and then come back, and then come and spend the night here. So we had her here. We were hoping to like just release her softly, but she just flew away one night. She never came back.
Oh, okay.
Not a very spectacular release,
No,
but success anyway.
I was like feeding her, and I was like, she's going to come back for sure every night for food, and she flew away, and that was it. And I was like, Felicia!
Well, really, that's what you want, don't
Yeah.
you? You
No,
do want
absolutely.
them to go, but even though I'm sure it's hard.
And I've just developed slowly. Obviously, my main focus was monkeys and baboons, but we just get like call outs for all sorts of animal species now, and you can't really say no. So although we're a primate sanctuary, we are a wildlife sanctuary for all species, and anything that comes in we try to get out as soon as possible, which is easier. It's a lot easier with the other species because they are easier to rehabilitate and release, whereas primates is more of a long-term project.
What makes that difference, Baye? Why are primates longer and why the others?
I think it's a process because you're not releasing just one animal at a time. You're trying to build up a troop, and you're trying to, and every single member of that troop has some sort of issue or some sort of problem or some sort of imprint on people that you've got to work on every single member of the troop to get them to the right stage for them to be released. Whereas with one animal, you can kind of just focus on that particular animal. The moment it's ready, you can put it into rehabilitation and release. Whereas here, you're working with like a whole school bus of them, with all their own problems, all their own issues.
And as much chaos as a school bus, I'm sure.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's a long process. I'm still learning. I still got a lot to learn about it, and I use Silka and various other places to teach me and help me. And I think our first release is going to be something amazing because it's something that I don't know yet, and it's going to be trial and error, and we're going to see how it goes. But with the guidance of everyone who's got me to where I am now, I know it will work.
You have some good mentors, that's
Absolutely,
true.
yeah. So it's like a process as well, like with these 3 older ones. So we've got Holly, Baloo, and Mfazi. We want to start integrating the babies in. So when we bring all 5 babies to them, some babies are absolutely petrified, whereas others, the youngest ones that we thought wouldn't integrate for another couple of months, are more keen than the actual older ones. So it's very long in particular, and you don't want to just shove them all as one big number inside there. You want to do it properly and carefully so that everybody gets in the right hierarchy, the right system, and fits into the family troop. No one's excluded.
It's a whole lot more complex than most of us realize, isn't it?
It absolutely is.
Because people think you can just let the monkey's a monkey and you put them together.
Exactly.
But it's just like families. You have different personalities, and some are going to get along, some are not going to get along.
Absolutely. So we've got 2 older monkeys there that we've got recently. We tried an introduction with some monkeys, and it hasn't gone so well yet. So we're trying different approaches now. So now we're trying to bond them with certain members of the monkey troop to make them friends, so that when we introduce them to the others that weren't so happy in the beginning, they've already got some friends in the troop. So it's really long process. It's like basically trial and error. You try introduce to this family member, they don't like it, you try the next one, and you keep going until you find a loophole where you can actually get them all in together and tolerating each other. And the most amazing thing for me is how quickly they adapt to being wild. So we raise them in this environment where we think we're doing what's right for them and that they actually prefer it. Whereas when you put them into their own wild environment, they prefer that so much more. My best example was Baye, my Warthog, when we did a release with him. He had a blanket, and every single night here he would sleep with his blanket. I'm sorry.
That's all right, no.
He would sleep with his blanket, and when I took him out to the release site, the first night he actually broke out of his enclosure. So we had basically a small enclosure, like a holding enclosure, and then more of a semi-wild enclosure. So he broke out of the holding enclosure and went into the semi-wild and did a burrow, built a burrow. And one night, this first night there, the next morning I came and I saw him in there, and I was like, oh. So the next night I went and I was like, no, he's going to need his blanket. So I put his blanket down for him, and I came the next morning. He'd shoved the blanket that he'd been with for the last 4 years out and was back in the burrow naturally. And just seeing that instantly, you know that they much prefer to be wild. And their wild instincts overtake everything that you think you've done for them in the correct way.
That's an amazing story.
Yeah.
I love that. So you find that with most species?
I do. And it's also a process. So it's not that you just like basically grab an animal and dump it in the bush and that's the end. It's a process of watching them. So the rehabilitation phase is, because like you said, it is sad, but the rehabilitation phase is so important because you see them become wild animals again. And then you see them like a lot happier than you ever thought that they could be. And then you just realize that they're meant to be wild. They're meant to be out in the bush.
What's this craziest story to tell us?
There's a lot of crazy stories. I don't know if we should release them.
No, just send it in if you're willing to share.
Yeah, that you're willing to share.
Okay, this is a crazy story, but it happens. Okay, so we had a monkey arrive that was rescued from, this is basically how small the world is. So we had a monkey arrive that was rescued about 7 years ago and raised at a lodge, and then she was obviously became a problem, so that some people in Harare took her over to look after her, and then they've been wanting to send her to us for quite a while, but we didn't have the right facilities for her yet. So when we built the second camp with the help of you guys after the serval release, they actually sent her to us, and something happened, and the first night she got here, she escaped. So now I didn't know her that well. I didn't know anything of her, so I thought, no, she'll stick around. Anyway, she ran away, and about 3 days later, we got a photo. We've got like a Bulawayo network, and people, if they need help with anything, they put it on this Bulawayo network. And there was a photo of a monkey saying, "This monkey's come, and my son was feeding it bread. We don't know where it's come from." And I recognized it. I'd only seen it for like an hour, and I recognized it, and I said, "I know this monkey." So we put out like a search party to say, like, we're looking for this monkey. This is what she looks like. She won't attack you, but if you can, confine her and help her, or let us know when she's there, and we can come and bring monkey cages. And what was happening is people were spotting her, and every time we got there with the monkey trap, she would move off to the next place. Anyway, about another 10 days later, some people at a school phoned us and said, "Look, we think we've got your monkey here. She's been here for like 2 days." So we dashed off, and I was really busy that morning on a rescue. So I sent Kumbu and Kule, which is a driver that we were using at the time. So I sent them with the monkey trap, and I said to them, "Right, go and catch her. Let's see if we can hopefully get her." So we took as many nice monkey treats as you could in this trap. And anyway, I was here doing some work, and next thing I heard this hooting, like, coming, and I was like, oh. So I ran up to the gate, and I saw Kumbu standing on the back of the car. And I was like, "Kumbu, what's happened? Have you got the monkey?" And he just like starts shaking his head laughing. And I slide the gate open, and Kule, the driver, is like there with his like aviator sunglasses on inside the car with this giant monkey on his shoulder. And I couldn't believe it. I was like, what on earth has happened? Anyway, we get here, and then Kumbu grabs her and puts her back in the enclosure. And I said, "What happened?" And what had happened is Kule used to work at the lodge 7 years ago, where Bones was raised and found. And when she saw him, she went straight to him and jumped on him in the car, and he just closed the door. How is that?
Kumbu rode in the back?
Yeah. So that's just, she wouldn't go to anyone, and the moment she saw Kule, she recognized him somehow. We don't know. Like, it's still, that's probably the craziest thing for me, because I don't know how to comprehend it. I don't know. And I said to him, I was like, "Kule, like, do you know this monkey?" And he was like, "Yeah, this is Bones. Like, I was around for like the good year and a half that she was at the lodge." And it was like 7 years ago. And now she's back, and she's with us, and she's bonded with us now, which is good as well. So we actually had her out. That's her in the enclosure there. We actually had her out the other day with some of our recent babies, trying to get her to like surrogate the babies and get to know them, because if she's got that bond with the babies, the others will be interested in those babies as well. And if they come as a package with Bones, then she'll...
So are you hoping to integrate her into your troop?
I think so. The interaction went really well the other day with her.
Okay.
Yeah, so we actually took her out of the enclosure and had her roaming around here, because we had those babies out. So 3 of our babies from last season that we've already introduced into the older monkeys were out with us and her. And we were just doing a little interaction with them, and they were out for a good 2 hours together, which is going well. So that's what we're going to do, is just slowly do it like that.
Okay.
And then hopefully...
Then the next stage is to get her used to the others, and she sees the others. It takes a lot of work, doesn't it?
It does, and I think that's the problem with a lot of like releases and rehabilitations, and we're talking about crossing that line of, you know, becoming commercial stuff. A lot of these cases take such specific amount of time and work and effort. But sometimes it does get easier to just forget about it and think, "Oh well, we'll just keep the animals," or "Oh well, they're happy here, they can stay here," instead of putting the time and effort, because it's time, effort, money, manpower. It's a lot, especially primates.
But that's where your heart is.
Yeah, absolutely, I do love them.
Yeah.
So what's your biggest challenge?
At the moment, funding, or what do you mean?
Just any.
Yeah,
whatever.
I would say funding, because we obviously, as a center, we want to keep developing and we want to keep growing and doing more projects. So the funding is the hardest thing, because what happens is that when we don't get funding, all we're doing is ticking over, and we can't expand and we can't do projects, and we need to be able to do that. So we've got quite a few that we want to do. We want to build another monkey camp, we want to do a new owl enclosure for permanent resident owls. So there's a lot in the pipeline that we want to better our facilities and grow them and make them better for future rescues, future permanent residents, so things like that. So funding is definitely, obviously, I think number one, the hardest.
Okay. You mentioned permanent residents. Your center's name is Free to Be Wild.
Yeah.
So it seems like that's the first objective.
Yeah.
Is to get them. What would make an animal have to stay there?
So, for example, our mongoose brothers, we've got Philly and Finch. They came here. They came from the border of Botswana and Zimbabwe, Victoria Falls area, and they came from a family troop that, I don't know if it's called the mongoose troop, so no, I don't think it is. I think it's called a gaggle.
A herd?
Gaggle.
Gaggle of geese.
Yeah, so wouldn't it be mongoose as well?
Gaggle of mongoose.
Okay, so don't put that in. They came from a family that had been infected with mongoose tuberculosis. So they were rejected by the family. No one really knows why, and a team there, the Victoria Falls Wildlife Trust, actually tried to integrate them back into the family and reintroduce them, and they rejected them again. So the decision was made that basically because they are infected with this disease, they're not going to be suitable candidates for release because, one, they won't go back to their original family, and two, if you try and integrate them into a new family anywhere around, they could transmit the disease, which is only transmittable to mongoose, not to people or any other animals. So they just said it's just a high risk case, and then a lot of the time people don't have the heart to euthanize them. So you look at the situation, you think, would it be kinder to put them down, or is a life in captivity?
Yeah, right. That's a hard one, isn't it?
Yeah, I always battle with that. That's my hardest thing, especially with like animals like owls and things that have lived wild, get injured, cannot be released again, and then come into a captive environment. I always battle with that one, trying to figure out what the kindest thing to do is. So like those guys, they came to us. They're monitored by a vet in Victoria Falls every couple of months to see if the disease has become active or they just stay carriers of it. So far so good, they're fine. But yeah, so they'll live out their days with us. They're not going to have a chance of freedom.
Right.
Yeah.
So due to illness or is it ever injury that?
Sometimes, yeah, injury, like Clippy was injury, his was a horn injury, and the horn started growing into his scalp, so we had to make the decision to cut it off, and then we just decided, because they're such territorial animals, we always want to give our animals a head start when they go through release and rehabilitation, just because they don't have that like head start that normal animals do, so gain weight, things like that. So if we released him with one horn, we felt like we weren't giving him suitable chance to survive in the wild, especially because he'd been raised in captivity all that time. So his was due to injury that he became a permanent resident.
So now, what do you consider your biggest successes?
Our releases, our successful releases, definitely. A lot of success, I would say, is working with national parks and getting them to believe in our project of releasing primates, because in the beginning they didn't. So I think now, and I would say that for a lot of followers and people that were against our project in the beginning, who now support us and help us and are actually genuinely interested. And I would say the same as well for the kids today. We had a lot of kids coming in saying we don't like baboons, and by the end of their camp this morning, they said their favorite animals were baboons. So I think just that pattern following through the work that we do is changing people's perspective on it and showing them a new angle, as these are just not these pests or vermin or dirty animals that they're known to be. Education and showing people.
Good.
That is a success. Oh, I mean, if you can change someone's mind or their heart,
absolutely, yeah.
Their heart.
And the thing is, it's just little by little. It's not gonna ever be huge amounts in one go. It's just if you can just change one person every now and then as you go along and come across them, then.
What's the biggest way that we could help you, us and other people, at large? What's the biggest way that we can help?
Funding. Yeah, networking, getting people. So a lot of funding comes in all sorts of ways as well. A lot of people want to help, but maybe if they don't have financial help, they don't know other ways. And our biggest thing is networking, getting your name out there and getting people to know what you do and what you stand for. So if people can't help financially, there's so many other ways of marketing, getting your names out there, education on your projects, that kind of thing.
What particular projects right now would you need some help with?
We would like to build this new monkey camp. So we've got those 2 big primate camps. We'd like to introduce a 3rd one now. We've had word that we might be getting a high case rescue soon. And we would like to have that as a facility that if there was any emergency animals, monkeys or baboon-wise, that came, we had the facility to hold them. Because I always think, like right now, if we had an emergency case land on our doorstep today, where would we put them, what would we do? So we'd like to build a 3rd monkey enclosure like that and design it so that it's actually segmented into 4 sections, so that we could open it up into one big camp for like the troops that we have at the moment, or we could use it as like first base for rescues that come immediately.
Okay. So would that just be for primates, or would you be able
no,
to
we could include anything. So all of our enclosures are designed for primates, but you can actually use them for certain other species as well, which is what we do. We try to rotate as well. Like the serval enclosure that we first used for was the rehabilitation phase for the servals that we've turned into a monkey camp now.
Right.
So that could be redesigned back into something else for another species if need be.
Okay. You know, like some projects have where you can adopt an animal or you can sponsor a worker or something. Have you got anything like that?
We have. We've just launched a new project called Guardians of the Wild, which allows people to, in the term, adopt an animal and look after it, become its carer for a year. So you pay a certain amount every year and you get to basically follow the story of that animal at the sanctuary from the time it arrives to the time that we hopefully release it and beyond release, follow-ups on releases and the success and how that animal gets on in the wild. Basically be a part of that stepping stone to getting that animal back into the wild.
That's marvelous.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, I know that labor is one of your biggest costs.
Yes.
So to sponsor one of your...
That would be amazing. Amazing project. Our fixed costs are basically what is one of our challenges every month, is that those are the costs that you can't push away or go around and find another route. Those are the ones that we have to obviously pay, and that's our labor. A big part of that is our labor. So to do a sponsorship program, if people wanted to sponsor our animal handlers monthly or even yearly, that would help us hugely.
What exactly is it that they all are responsible for?
Oh, the whole sanctuary. So basically Kumbu, as you know, built the sanctuary up with me, so he's very protective over it. And Dingani has also become very protective over the sanctuary and the animals as well, which is really good for me to see. So their roles, they do maintenance, they do feeding, they do animal care, animal welfare, they look after our grounds, they do enrichment, they do enclosure management and maintenance. They do absolutely everything there is to do. We do it, and we try to all do it together. We try to learn everything that we can so that everybody knows the roles and everybody knows how to look after animals and emergency cases that come in, the protocol, what to follow, what to do. They have a lot of experience because they're on the ground with the animals all the time. So they're living here with them day and night. We've got like a little bit of a hierarchy system going where Kumbu is like the dominant when it comes to the primates. So they respect him and they look up to him. He does all the disciplining. He's the one who basically can control them just by his voice.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so he shouts at them and they just go absolutely running, and they normally run to Dingani. So Dingani's like their mother. So Dingani does all our bushwalks. So he's our handler that takes all the baboons out on the bushwalks. Whereas they won't go with Kumbu. They will go with him, but they're quite intimidated by him as they see him as a dominant. So they see Dingani and they just absolutely climb all over him, and we actually force them off him to make sure that they walk through the bush. Otherwise, they just want to hang on him and love him. So yeah, I'd say they basically manage the sanctuary for me. And it's been, a lot of people ask this question because up until now, before Amy and Alec came on board, they asked me how do I do the sanctuary when I'm traveling and doing releases and doing other stuff. And the only reason I can do it is because of the team that I've got here that I leave behind, the team that know every single thing to do. There's been times where we've needed food or medicine, and these guys know which pharmacies in town to go to. They know who to speak to. They know how to get to a vet if I'm not here. They know where to buy animal food. They've got all of these things, and they look after it for me. So when I go away, like I travel quite a lot on releases and rescues, I know everything's in safe hands. I don't ever have to worry. And if there is a problem, they'll just call me and then we'll work through it together and find a way. But generally I'll come back and they'll tell me, oh, this and this and this happened, and we've already sorted it out before I even get here. So yeah, I wouldn't be able to run the sanctuary the way that I have been by myself if I didn't have this team of guys with me.
Plus, you also have to live a life. You're a young person. Right?
Absolutely. I've only just started living my life again, by the way.
And that's a good thing.
And for the first time in my life, I have some of my own money because I'm not putting it into the sanctuary, which has been really good.
That's good, because you're a young person and we don't want you to burn out.
No, and that's what I felt last year. I felt like I'd got to the point where I'd burnt out. And when you're so passionate about something that you don't want it to die. Okay. And I panicked because I didn't want this huge thing that I spent so long building up to just fade away into nothing. Yeah.
What would it be to sponsor? What's the amount of money that would actually pay for the salary? Yeah, so basically they get $200 each a month, which is what they on. So we've got 3 guys. We've got 2 permanents, which is Kumbu and Dingani, and then we've got Kesto, who just
just like does a rotation system. When Dingani and Kumbu have their off days, Kester comes in to fill in.
Okay.
And he's also really good. He's a really good handler that's we're building up, and he can manage Holly, which is the biggest test. Every time we get a new person to work with us, we throw them in with Holly, and if they can handle it, then they get to stay. If they can't, we're just not sorry.
So not an interview process, just throw them in.
Absolutely. And then we'll get guys that come in, and Kumbu will look at me and he'll say, this one won't handle Holly, let's not even waste our time. I'll be like, should we try? He's like, no, let's get the next one. So Holly is the interviewer.
So basically for $200 a month, which would be 2 times 12 is $2,400 a year, is what would be a way to sponsor
Our handlers, absolutely.
our handler.
Yeah. That would be amazing. If we could get our handlers sponsored for the year, that means that any projects like Wildlife Warriors, educational tours, things like that, we could put that money towards developing projects like building new monkey enclosures, working on release site enclosures. So that would help us hugely.
So what we would like to do, Baye, I think we'd like to be able to sponsor for half a year.
Of one of your handlers.
One of our guardians of the wild.
Guardians of the Wild. And I think I would like, if it could be Kumbu, about
And we know him very well.
Absolutely. And you guys have helped him before in the past.
Yes, right.
Oh, thank you.
Okay. First,
Thank you.
dollar notes.
I feel like crying. Thank you guys so much. That's a huge pressure off us. That's one of our biggest monthly battles, is that beginning of the month, all we do is aim to just pay for our staff. Thank you guys for your support always throughout the years. You know, one of our biggest sponsors and followers, so thank you. Thank you for coming to visit.
Ah, you're welcome. I remember when you first wrote me.
I know.
Would you consider helping us?
We're better at it. Katie's got that under control. She said, I didn't even know how to write an email. I was like, how do I ask people for help? I was like,
Hey, well, you obviously did well, because
Thank you.
we responded in the positive.
absolutely. No, thank you guys so much. And thank you for the work that you do for everyone. And you help Silka and other organizations that are just like us. And to be honest, like you help us, you impact on us so much, because we are a small organization, and it just means so much to us what you do.
Come along, join us. Join the adventure.